Welcome everyone to Liberal Arts in Action. We're going to start in just a minute. We'll take a minute to allow people to join, and then we'll introduce our panelists. So again, welcome. I'm so glad to see you here. My name is Dr. Deanna Cook, and I am so excited to introduce and welcome you all to Liberal Arts in Action. I serve as the Director of Engaged Learning for BCLA's College, for Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts. The series is designed to be, for some, a preview, and for others, a reminder of how liberal arts disciplines bring thought-provoking, well-reasoned explorations of a variety of topics, current events, and controversies. We do this by spotlighting the work of our own faculty and staff here at the Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts. Upcoming sessions focus on living and doing social justice, documenting history that we're currently making, and job searching, even during a time of stress, COVID, uprisings. Additional resources about the topics and the speakers, along with your ability to register for the sessions, can be found at the bellarmine.lmu.edu events Liberal Arts in Action. There we go. Just trying to get my thing to work. And you can register for any of the workshops and series there. So looking forward to that. Just a little bit of housekeeping. For each session, you will not be able to speak directly with the speaker, but feel free to type your questions or responses in the Q&A boxes. We will be monitoring this. If there are some questions, because Dr. Fazzio will be doing some practice with us, if there's some practice questions, she will answer them, but any discussion questions, we're going to wait until the end of the session, and she will engage with a dialogue or an answering of your questions then. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lori Fazzio, who is clinical professor of yoga and health, and she holds a doctorate in physical therapy and is a certified yoga therapist. Her interests include subtle body and pain management, connecting yoga and medicine for improving happiness and well-being, and implementing community-based yoga programs for health, well-being, and pain management. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fazzio, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. Thank you very much. So I am happy to be here. And as you just heard, I'm the clinical professor of yoga and health. And my interest is in looking at the benefits of yoga practices on our health and well-being. I want to give a little caveat in that yoga wasn't or isn't about obtaining health and well-being. It's actually a spiritual discipline for liberation from this material world. And actually many of the yogic texts, even the ancient yogic texts, mention health and disease because disease is an obstacle to liberation. And they also mention many of the health benefits. And about 100 years ago in India, they started to specifically study the practices of yoga for their specific health and wellness benefits. And that's where my interest lies and what I teach in the yoga studies program. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And in the talk today, I will be giving about a 10-minute talk, and then we will be doing some practices. They can be done seated in a chair or seated on the floor, and then there'll be a standing practice. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, so resiliency. We're talking about resiliency, and the definition, there's many definitions, and one of them is adapting well in the face of adversity. People look at it as bouncing back from difficult times. Hold on, I want to get this out of my way here. Okay. And then many people will discuss it as a positive adaptation to change or adversity. And that actually could fall under a category called post-traumatic growth. So I'm talking about resiliency, and in actuality, what I'm hoping to inspire you towards is something called post-traumatic growth. We don't always have control over this. You've probably heard of post-traumatic stress. This would be the opposite of that, which is when we experience a stressful situation or event, we can actually have a growth experience. We could have a spiritual growth. We might be aware of new possibilities. We might recognize our own personal strength, and there's several others. So what we're talking about today is how yoga can help facilitate this. And specifically, I will be talking about the effects of COVID and physical distancing or social isolation. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you about all the fears that many people have been having. It's not just the fear of catching COVID and getting sick, could be your loved ones, or fears about jobs or school, being able to see friends. As you know, there are so many different fears, and many of them are real fears. So yoga isn't some magical thinking that makes our fears go away. What it can do is provide us with support as to how we react to these stressors. And when we're in a stress mode, we are in what is called survival mode. And our nervous system is constantly evaluating our environment. Are we safe or are we under threat? And what happens is when we have fear, the amount of threat that we perceive increases significantly. And what that does is puts us into a reactionary mode. You might have noticed that you might snap at people more quickly, you might have less patience, might have difficulty sleeping, all kinds of things. And yoga practices can help us to be more reflective and more responsive. And from a psychoneurophysiological standpoint, it actually changes the chemistry in our system and our nervous system, changes the neural pathways, and enables us to be more empathetic, to be able to have better cognition, to be able to have better mood, so less depression and anxiety, and the list goes on and on. I won't be speaking specifically today about that psychoneurophysiology, because yoga is something that we can learn about, but it's really something we need to experience. So today's session will be about experiencing a few of these practices so that you can see for yourself how you feel. Now, we are experiencing right now what we call ongoing stress or persistent stress. It's been several months since this COVID crisis, and many people have been experiencing ongoing stress their entire lives. And these are just some of the negative effects that ongoing stress can have on our system. And as I mentioned before, that in about 100 years ago in India, they started to study the effects of these practices. Since then, even on to today, most major medical institutions around the world have been studying the effects that yoga can have on our health and well-being. And specifically, each one that I have mentioned here, we have several studies that indicate that yoga can have positive effects to counter these negative effects of stress. So we're going to do a little experiment ourselves right now. So I'm going to ask you for a moment to pause and think about the stress monster that's been chasing you. And what I mean by that is think of something and actually feel something. So first think about something that's been stressful to you as of lately. This could also be an emotion. Perhaps you're experiencing anger or frustration, something that's been a challenge for you, whether it's something that you perceive to be in your control or out of your control. Take a moment to think about that. I'm going to invite you to feel what you feel in your body. So for example, if I'm experiencing a lot of anger lately, start to feel, where do I feel anger in my body? What's the effect on the body? And oftentimes the effect will be a bit of a collapsing inwards, maybe a tension. So notice what's happening in your physical body, any sensations, and observe what's happening with your breath, your mood. And just take note, because we're going to come back to this later. Another way, in case you couldn't think of one, is take a moment and just slouch. Many of us have been over Zoom a lot at our computers. Go ahead and slouch, really let your posture slouch, and try to smile. Feels kind of awkward. Now come upright. Take an upright posture. You can open your arms and try to frown. It also feels awkward because we know that the positions that we put our body in actually affect our mood, and it actually can cause chemical changes in our system that further enhance the stress response. So we're just going to take note of that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID itself in a different lens. Most of you probably recognize that COVID affects our respiratory system, and it can, in its worst case, inhibit our ability to breathe. That's why people go on ventilators. It clogs the lungs and makes it difficult to be able to take in a breath. In yoga, we call this breathing, it's prana, it's life force energy, that we're able to bring in prana through our breathing. There are many breathing practices to control the prana in our system. It also affects our cardiovascular system. It thickens the blood, which can cause blood clots and strokes. This is our circulatory system. It can also cause inflammation. And so what our body does if we have the COVID virus or any virus is we have an immune response. And that response, as you probably heard, is a fever. It's one of the responses. So our body fights the virus with heat. A fever is a heat in the body to fight the virus. This is our immune response. Yoga practices have been shown to increase our immune capacity, whereas stress can decrease our immune capacity. In yoga, we talk about that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. So we're not individually in existence, and our existence is 5 elements. We have the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. So everything in the manifest world, including us, are made up of these 5 elements. So in the macrocosm, so COVID in the microcosm we just spoke about, in the macrocosm, in essence, we have been somewhat of a virus to the planet. We have clogged the Earth's waterways, and we have clogged the airways. We have polluted the airways and made it difficult for the Earth to breathe. And we have clogged the waterways, the circulatory system of the Earth, and that's the pollution in the ocean. And the Earth has had its own response, its own heat response, which is global warming. So both this microcosm and macrocosm has responded with heat. And we're going to talk about now how COVID can be a catalyst, this pandemic as a catalyst. And first with the Earth. So we've already seen in these past few months, COVID's the first thing that stopped humans in their tracks across the planet. We haven't been doing as much air travel. People are not commuting. Factories have not been producing as much. And while that has stresses on our economy, it's been a catalyst for the earth to have its resiliency and bounce back. And we see that because the air is cleaner and the water is cleaner. So the earth is showing its resiliency to bounce back. And the question we can ask ourselves is, how is COVID going to be a catalyst for us? Do we want to merely bounce back to where we were before? Or can we have this post-traumatic growth where we can actually go to something better? What solutions can we have for a healthier planet? And how can COVID be a catalyst for us to take a moment, step back, reflect how we've been showing up in the world, and take action towards a better world, be it for the environment, for social justice, for our interpersonal relationships, and our own health. So the practice that I'm going to share with you today, I'll share a few practices. And the concept that we're going to be talking about is called tapas. Now, tapas is a Sanskrit word that has many translations, and one of them is heat. It's a form of heat. It's also referred to as this heat that we can create for transformation. And it also refers to our inner strength. So when we practice tapas, we build this inner heat and build our inner strength. And in the yoga practices, when we practice tapas, we can practice this on the yoga mat. And it helps to change our nervous system so that we show up in the world. We take tapas out into the world to make the world a better place. I'm going to stop my share here now. And I mentioned that the research has been to help health and wellness. There was a study that came out this week that was done by Harvard, UCSD, and the Chopra Institute. And this was the first study that I've seen that actually recommends yoga not only to just enhance well-being and support somebody through illness, actually as a treatment for COVID. It's the first time I've seen something like that. It's quite powerful. And I'm going to share a few of the practices that were shown in that study to be beneficial for helping as both a preventative and as a treatment for COVID. I don't mean to infer that you can do this and not catch COVID, or that if you get COVID, this is the only thing to do. These are just supplemental. Somebody's asking the name of the study, and I can share that with you afterwards. It just came out this week. So I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the practices. And we will be doing practices that you can be doing sitting in a chair, or if you're sitting on the ground, it's best to have something underneath you so that your spine is straight. And we're going to start with a breathing practice. I will back up so that you can see me. We'll first do a practice that's called Kapalabhati. Kapalabhati is a practice that can be used to cleanse the respiratory tract. It's also used prior to engaging into the breathing practices, which are called pranayama of yoga, because it helps us to be able to control our breath better. There are a few contraindications for this practice. One is, if you're pregnant, please don't practice. If you currently have high blood pressure that's not regulated, if you have a hiatal hernia, or if you've recently just eaten a larger meal, you won't want to do this, and you can practice deep breathing instead. So I'm going to back up so that you can see me better, and I will be elevated on a cushion so that you can see me. You can sit cross-legged. I'm going to sit up on a cushion so that you can see me better here. And I'll go sideways first. This practice involves a forceful exhale using the belly, and then relax and allow a passive inhale. So it looks something like this. So we're going to try this. So you can take a moment and either sit cross-legged, preferably on a cushion so your spine is straight. If your spine is slouched, the diaphragm can't function properly. And that also creates what we call chest breathing. And when we chest breathe, it creates an anxious state. So find a posture, and you can do this seated in a chair as well. And we'll do 3 rounds of 10. So what we're going to do is we'll do 10 of these breaths. And again, it's a forceful exhale by contracting the belly, and it's an exhale through the nose. Relax and let a natural inhale come in. And then we do that 10 times. We'll do it slower today. Sometimes it's done rapidly. We'll pause, and then we'll do 2 more rounds of this. This practice creates heat. It also may make you a little dizzy and lightheaded. This is normal when you begin practicing. When we practice tapas, one of the things that we're trying to do is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So unless you have a medical condition, if you have a medical condition, I would recommend that you can just breathe deeply or do this very slowly. If you're healthy, then see if you can be comfortable with this slight lightheadedness, and then observe how it will settle down. So after the 10, we'll pause and we will observe what's happening and wait and allow the next inhale to arrive. So we'll get ready to begin. You can have your hands on your belly to help give you some what we call proprioceptive feedback. You can inhale, and we'll go ahead with 10 times. Relax and observe and allow the inhale. If you're okay with that, we will try another round of 10. So inhale and begin. And relax. You may observe that it takes a little while for a natural inhale to arrive. And this is one of the effects it has in calming our nervous system. So it initially heats us, and then it creates a sense of calm. So we'll do 1 more round. Just observe what you're experiencing. And throughout all these practices, the invitation is to observe the sensations that you're experiencing without judgment. So we call this non-judgmental awareness. So you may notice that thoughts come up worrying what this means, and see if you can observe the sensations merely as sensations. This we call this interoception, this ability to sense the inner experiences of what's happening in our body. And this practice of practicing interoception is associated with increased empathy, increased cognition, and many other positive benefits. We're going to practice a breath that we will then put into a posture, which is called asana. Well, we will practice that posture that was on the slide. It's called tree pose. Ideally, we want to breathe into the belly, and there's some videos on the Yoga Studies website that give you more details about this practice Kapalabhati that we just did and a breath practice. What we're going to focus on is creating a steady inhale and a steady exhale. Research studies have shown that both a 5-count inhale and a 5-count exhale, or a 6-count inhale and a 6-count exhale, creates a state of what we call coherence. And what that is associated with is what we call increased heart rate variability. And this is associated with improved both physical and mental health and well-being. So it's a practice that's used in medicine And it's also a practice that comes from yoga. When the Himalayan tradition, where is one of the traditions I studied yoga with, that our students also get experience with, all asanas, all the postures had to be done with a 6-count inhale and a 6-count exhale. And when you do a challenging posture that we'll do in a little while, your body creates this heat and it creates what we call a sympathetic state. It's a challenge to the body. If we can keep the breath steady and comfortable throughout that challenging physical posture, that tells our nervous system that we're safe. And this can help improve our heart rate variability. We can also think positive thoughts. And what we'll do is we'll put a smile on our face, because having a smile on your face has also been correlated with positive hormones in our system. So let's start with the breath. We're going to go ahead and inhale. We'll start with a 3-count. And if that's comfortable, you can go to the 4-count. If that's comfortable, the 5 and the 6. So follow along. And when you feel like it's a strain, then take it back 1 breath. We're going to just set to find what your comfortable breath is. So I'll start by completely exhaling. And now inhale for the count of 1, 2, 3. And exhale for the count of 3, 2, 1. And then continue on again, inhaling for 3 and exhaling for 3. Ideally, the belly expands on the inhale and it draws in on the exhale. We don't want to be breathing into the chest, but it may take practice. One more time, inhaling for 1, 2, 3, and exhaling for 3, 2, 1. Let's go to inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we'll try 5 if it's comfortable. Inhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you want to try 6, we'll do 1 round of 6. So exhale completely and inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Just pause and notice. And then we're going to do a standing posture. I'm going to back up so you can see me a little better. Now, if balance is a challenge, you might want to be near a wall or piece of furniture that you can hold on to. I'm on a thick carpet, which makes it more challenging. So if you have a thick yoga mat or thick carpet, just know that's more challenging. You might want to be on a solid surface. We're going to hold the practice today. See, for our time, we'll hold it for 2 minutes. Ramaswamy, who's one of the yoga teachers who comes to LMU, in his class, we practice this for 10 minutes on each side. And I would encourage you after another time to practice increasing and increasing. I like to stand in front of a tree when I practice this posture, which is called tree pose. There are a few variations. You can place the ball of the foot on the ground with your heel here. This is one variation. You might want to take it farther and put the foot against the shin. Try not to place it on the knee, it's stressful for the knee. Or you can lift the foot up and put it into the groin. So find the position that feels most comfortable for you. And if you're in this tall position, you can press the leg and the foot together. So we're going to begin now. You're going to hold the posture. Now, when we hold balance postures, we tend to hold our breath. So our idea here is the breath that we just did, is you're going to maintain that steady breath. We're going to add the arms in, which is as you inhale, you'll open the arms. And as you exhale, close the arms. So choose the breath count that was comfortable for you. So for example, it might be a 4 count inhale, matching the arms to the breath, and a 4 count exhale. Now it's normal to wobble when you hold the balance. You might want to find a steady point that's not moving because that can help you with your balance. The focus here is on maintaining a steady, comfortable breath, inhaling and exhaling. And if you fall over, just get back up again because life will knock us down. And do we quit or do we get back up? I'm also going to invite you to put a smile on your face. So that smile will tell your body that you're safe. And as you inhaling, moving the arms, exhaling, bringing them in. We'll add one more component, which is as you inhale, you can feel loving kindness to the world. And as you exhale, feel loving kindness in yourself. So inhaling with the breath and feeling a sense of loving kindness to the world, and exhaling loving kindness to yourself. So I'll be quiet now so that you can continue this, and we'll go for 1 more minute. And then you can bring that leg down and shake it out. If you feel pain in your joints, that's a message that to stop. But if it's the muscles that you're feeling the heat, that's what we're going for. So let's try the other side. We're not symmetrical beings, so the posture you chose for one side might not be the same for this side. So go ahead and choose the variation that you want to do. And we'll begin. Again, matching the inhale, opening the arms, and the slow exhale as you close. Smile on the face, feeling a sense of loving kindness to the world and loving kindness to yourself. Just feel the experiences inside your body as you do this. Note the sensations, note the thoughts, and try to focus on the experience, the physical sensations, particularly of the breath. So I'll be quiet and let you know so you can focus on your experience, and I'll let you know when the time is complete. Great, and you can bring the foot down, shake out the legs a little bit. And while you're up here, you can shake out some tension. When we feel stress, we have stress hormones in our system, and sometimes shaking it out can help to regulate the nervous system. You can just shake everything out, particularly after being immobilized. So when we have stress hormones that build up, and just shaking, that's what animals do. When they're stressed, they look alert, and then they run around or shake, and then they take a nap. So we can take some advice from some of the animals and do a little bit of shaking ourselves. So you can come back into a comfortable seated position. And we're going to do a practice that's called Brahmari, or bee's breath. This is typically done closing off the senses, but since we're trying not to be touching our faces a lot, we're just going to plug the ears. And I'm going to talk you through it first, and then you won't be able to hear me, so I will give you some time. But what you'll do is you'll cover the soft part in front of the ear to cover the ears. And with the ears covered, you'll make the sound of a bee, and this happens on the exhale. What this does is it extends the length of the exhalation, which creates a relaxation response. So we just did a heated practice, standing for 2 minutes, and now we're gonna do a little bit more calming. This practice of Brahmari has actually been studied quite extensively in the medical research for many reasons, including for sinus issues and other types of conditions. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 rounds, and then you can join me back here at your pace. You're welcome to have your eyes open or closed. If they're open, find a steady gaze, and I'll demonstrate it first. So it sounds like that. And what you can do is you can play around with gently changing the amount of pressure on each ear so that you can get the sensation of the sound moving within the space inside the cavities of your ears. So that will give you this interoceptive experience to sense the sound. So let's get ready, and you can do 3 rounds, extending that sound as long as it's comfortable. When it starts to get shaky, you pause, take an inhale, and go again. So ready? And we'll begin. Again, observe how you feel. And now I'm going to talk you through a brief guided meditation. We'll do brief so we have time for questions, and you're welcome to be seated upright or lying down during this practice. So I'll give you a moment to get comfortable. And if it's comfortable, you can allow your eyes to close. And bring your awareness to the earth beneath you. Find the area in your body that feels the most heavy, and allow yourself to sink even deeper into the earth beneath you. Letting go of any effort letting go of tension. Allow the earth to completely support you. Feel the whole body heavy. The body is getting heavier and heavier. Feel this quality of heaviness, the elements of earth. And now bring the attention to the mouth, sensing any taste in the mouth, the moisture level in the mouth, sensing the moisture in the eyes, the area between the eyelids and the eyeballs. Sense the fluid that lubricates the eyes. This is the element of water in our system. See if you can sense the circulation, perhaps in the arms. You may feel a tingling or a pulsing, a vibration. Take a moment to sense the sensation of the fluid circulating in the system. And then bring the attention to the solar plexus in the center of the abdomen. See if you can sense the quality of heat in this region. Heat deep within the abdomen, or perhaps imagine the hot sun warming your entire body. Allow the sensation of heat to spread through the entire torso. The entire body is warm. Allow the body to feel warmer and warmer. It's the element of fire. The body is warm. Feel the whole body warm. Now bring the attention to the airways, sensing the air entering the nostrils is cooler than the air that exits the nostrils. Without controlling the breath, just observing, and observe how the lungs expand on the inhalation and they contract on the exhalation. Without controlling it, observe this element of air that we experience through the breath. And then bring the attention to the space behind the eyes and between the ears. The space where you sensed the sound during the Brahmari breath. The element of sound. Bring the attention to this space within the head where the thoughts arise. And extend the awareness to the space beyond, the endless space beyond the body. Observe this quality of space. No effort needed. And take a moment to observe the observer itself. You've just switched your awareness through all the 5 elements. Who was observing the 5 elements? See if you can place the awareness on awareness itself. Resting into being the witness. Allowing whatever rises to rise and fall. No effort needed. And then bring the awareness back to the breath, slowly deepening the breath and moving the fingers and the toes. And bringing the hands together, rubbing them to create heat between the hands. And then placing the palms in front of the eyes. And slowly allowing the eyes to open. You can lower the hands. And take a moment from this space to bring to awareness that emotion or stress monster that we experimented with in the beginning. Bringing that into your awareness. And notice now if there's any new perspective, any new understanding, any shift in your experience of recognizing the stressor in life. And then we'll open it up to any questions. So I'm curious to hear how anybody's feeling, if anybody's willing to share any questions or experiences. So a question is, can the stress monster be worry? That's a fabulous question. Yes, worry is something that we self-inflict ourselves with. So we will worry and ruminate. And the yoga practices have been shown to actually, when practiced regularly, help to reduce our rumination and worry. So what we're doing is we're training our brain and our nervous system to redirect, because worry is looking at what's happening in the world and then we create more stories about it. So that's one of the main things that these yoga practices can do. So please comment on resist nothing. I think I may have, I'm not quite sure what you mean by resist nothing. If you could clarify, that would be good. I feel now space between myself and my worry. Yes, that's wonderful. Not that we have a destination, but yes. I feel. What is the best way to deal with the stress of having to write an essay? Oh, what a fabulous question. So we have many practices that can help support our cognition. Actually having the strength, so the physical practices can discharge some of the stress hormones. And when the stress hormones are elevated in our system, again, we're working out of survival and we actually can't access our highest cognition that's needed to write an essay. One practice that is very useful is something called Nadi Shodhana. This is an alternate nostril breathing. And I think we have on our website a video of that. If not, we'll post one. That one's a quick one. that you can do immediately before writing. If you need to write to access, helps our right left brain get balanced. These practices of yoga are not meant to be a quick symptom fix, but rather something that we practice. It's called abhyasa. And the tapas that I talked about is part of something that we call Kriya Yoga. And part of that is practice. When we practice and practice and practice, we actually can reprogram our nervous system so that we do worry less and we actually are able to think more clearly and problem solve better. How can yoga help us cope with uncertainty? Oh, I love these questions. Yoga helps us to recognize those elements that we were speaking of are constantly changing. This is what we call the manifest world. The elements are constantly changing. You may see this in the ocean. The waves are constantly changing, and so is the world. Everything is constantly changing. And there's one thing that's not changing, and that's the divine aspect of ourselves. In Samkhya philosophy, they call this Purusha and Prakriti. Prakriti are all these elements that are ever changing, the manifest world. Purusha is that divine aspect of ourselves that is never changing. You might know it as the soul or the Atman. And when I spoke earlier about yoga is about spiritual liberation, it's about disidentifying with the manifest and reuniting with that aspect of ourselves that's never changing. And when we practice this, it starts to give us perspective about the world and uncertainty. So let me see here. So a question about returning to yoga in a studio versus the risks of the health and stress. I think this is an individual comfort level. We know recently that COVID is on the rise in the United States, and that many people aren't practicing safe wearing a mask, things like this that we know can reduce the transmission. And we also know that there are a lot of mental health concerns about being in social isolation. So I think it's a balance, and we can try to connect with one another as much as we can in safe formats. It's gathering in groups. If we know that everybody's practicing safe practices, there's less risk. But if somebody's out not practicing safe practices and then they come into group, that's when we run into difficulties. So I'm not sure I have a clear answer on that. It does bring up one comment I'd like to make, which is about our nervous system. And we have, you may have heard of the fight or flight. So our autonomic nervous system has our sympathetic, our fight or flight, and our parasympathetic, which is called our rest and digest. There's actually another element, and Stephen Porges gives us the polyvagal theory. And this is that we have a more evolved element of our nervous system called the social engagement system. And this can partner with the fight or flight. So it's what we were just doing in the tree pose, is we had our sympathetic system engaged to be doing a physical activity while we had a steady breath and a smile on our face. And that it activates the social engagement with the sympathetic. It's what we call safe mobilization, as opposed to unsafe immobilization where we're in fear. We also have unsafe immobilization, which is the freeze response. And then we have safe immobilization, which is when we can be relaxed without having worry, or be relaxed in the company of somebody else. And social engagement, so our nervous system is constantly reading the environment, and the social engagement system is reading our facial expressions. So it will pick up, you may have experienced being with someone and they're like, and you ask them what's wrong, and they say nothing. And you know something's wrong because your nervous system is reading the cues. So if I look at you like this, you might just notice your system when I do this. Angry. You can notice what happens in your nervous system Versus if I smile at you and tell you nice things, and I speak with what we call prosodic vocalizations. So these are these intonations of the human voice that can tell your nervous system that you're safe, that I'm not a threat. So on Zoom, many of us who teach Zoom will see this on the other end of the screen. It's a flat affect. We have no idea if the people are enjoying what we're seeing. So it can make us a little more nervous. So it can be helpful when you're on Zoom calls or when you're talking with people to activate the social engagement, to help people feel safer. And that way you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping another human being navigate these difficult times. So a question about guided meditations. There is a website, a free app called Insight Timer. And it looks like a meditation bowl on the front of it. It's a free app. And they have, oh my goodness, I think, can't remember if it's 30,000 or 300,000 free guided meditations. You can find these 5 elements meditations. You could look up body scan, yoga nidra. These are all great introductory types of what we call somatic meditations that help us to be able to access versus just quieting your mind and not think thoughts. It's a very difficult practice to do.
So I came on just because we're going to have to end here.
Okay.
So thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. There are indeed some additional questions and comments, and I'm sure we may be able to get back to those a little later. But thank you again. If you want more information about the Liberal Arts in Action series, you can sign up at this website here. And Dr. Fazzio, thank you so much. Really
thank you. Anybody's welcome
you.
to email me questions as well. Thank you very much, everybody.
Right, thank you.